Un petit peu de son. Bonjour, bienvenue sur Équipe Auto.
Good morning. Welcome to Équipe Auto. Saturday, last day, and for the first time, the Équipe Auto has been organized in Lyon, next to the automotive show. So we have had more participants. And we are here today to talk about training for 45 minutes. I'm going to introduce the speakers just afterwards. So we talked initially about the repair of electric vehicles, electric batteries. And we would like to talk about the type of training needed, in particular for technicians, the future professionals also. So the initial training on the electric vehicles or the IECs that have been electrified. So I think that you all have a bright future in the area of training. The president of CFPA, the training body of the National Federation of Automotive Trades. Christophe, you are the training director, Angélique, a certification manager within SNFA. And next to you have the representative of GARAC, and then Elizaveta CHERNYSHOVA. You are the regional representative, so to speak, because you're representing CARA, the cluster. And last but not least, and also from the region, you have Yann GASSAN, responsible for the passenger vehicles and two-wheelers and training courses, and you can therefore talk about all of that at length. Now, you know that the transition requires changes, transition in terms of training also for the employees, for those are currently working, but also for the young people. So we need to very quickly define what the needs are. CFPA was involved or did conduct studies to assess what the needs are. You have been working with other players, trying to assess what the needs and workshops are. Well, you're right. In fact, we started thinking about all of that for quite a long time. We have been in place for 30 years, and we did start working on these issues because it is important for us to follow the needs expressed and adjust our training courses accordingly. Today we talk about electrification, and we therefore had to focus on new issues. Well, nothing is really, entirely new, because in fact things have been evolving constantly with the past 40 years. We're trying to be as close as possible to the needs expressed by those in the field. And this goes down to the actual initial training, which I assume will be one of the subjects today. And as part of our exchanges with other European countries, we're trying to see what are the best practices in those countries and then adapt our processes. We know that it is difficult in certain cases to adapt, and we think that it's important to start from the beginning, from the initial training. It's important for us to go to other countries, Estonia, Spain, Norway, and so on, to see how those countries have been coping with those technological evolutions. Well, Norway, yes, which you mentioned, I think that 70% or even more of new registrations are electric vehicles. So my question is, have they adjusted their training courses already? Yes, this necessarily. First of all, you have to take into account the geographical specificities in Europe, which explains why some countries have decided to go full electric very quickly. Estonia, for example, they raise a real reluctance, in fact, to the idea of going electric. But in any case, all those countries have started thinking about the type of changes, the basic changes that are needed in the training of future operators so that they can repair vehicles, electric vehicles. Well, I'm also talking about continuous training. It's our role to provide such training, but any continuous training has to rely on initial training that is adapted to the changes we are talking about. Yesterday we had interesting debates about data accessibility, and all of that shows that if the employee has not benefited from initial training to these new elements, then it will be even difficult for us to provide and efficiently provide the continuous training. So therefore, I wouldn't separate these two stages in the training process. We are lucky enough to be able to work both on the continuous training needs and also in the basic training needs. So you're very familiar with the various automotive trades, including multi-brand repairers, and some are reluctant. This requires a cultural change. Yes, as I said, the first feedback, people referred more on certification as opposed to safety issues. So the stake, therefore, is to show that electric vehicles are just another form of mobility, and which we have to deal with, just like what we did for other technologies. So, for moving from the carburetors to the injector, so that was a shift which we were able to overcome, and we continue to, develop. Angélique FERNIER, well, we agree that young people need to be trained to these evolutions, and it's sort of a shift, but a gradual shift from the current vehicles, on the road. And this is important for young people who are going to have their career in the automotive sector. Now, our prospects, our assessment is that if a young people were to join a training course on, let's say, vehicle maintenance, that person would have to work both on the IECs and also on the electric vehicles. So they will start with the IEC and the electric vehicles, and that actual shift would take place when he is 43 years of age. That is when the majority of the fleet will be electric vehicles. So that person would be 43 when this shift takes place. In other words, young people who are starting off today need to be trained both on the IEC engines, but also on the electric vehicle, knowing that within something like 20 years, the shift would have been done. And currently, however, that shift is taking place gradually. It's not like in the industry where the, let's say, the turn, the change happens more or less suddenly. So you are in charge of training engineering, and you are changing, you are making sure that the different diplomas are being reviewed. How do you proceed? Now, we were assigned by our national association to review the training courses for vehicle maintenance. So we submitted a memo to the ministry with the purpose of revamping these diplomas. That process will start at the end of the year, and this should become operative by September 2025. So it takes quite a long time for the 3 diplomas we are in charge of, whether it be light vehicles, commercial vehicles, or on motorbikes. You have decided to integrate a certification to operate on electric vehicles. Yes, indeed. Indeed, that's a very crucial subject. Well, the safe use of those electric vehicles is essential, so therefore we need to integrate a specific certification on electric vehicles, and we need also to, broadly speaking, integrate training courses on the new technologies, including the ADAS. So a young person who starts off in 2025, when he gets his diploma in 2028, is he going to be EV ready? Well, he would have been trained both on the ICE engines, but also on the electric engines. So that's the real stake, because it's the transition period. In terms of number of vehicles, quite a significant number of vehicles are still powered by IEC engines. So we need to make sure that they can also repair IEC vehicles. So that's the reason why that transition has to be gradual.
Now, for that shift, you also have the diplomas for various branches, and we can talk about the TEAVA, which is in fact a diploma for automobile after-sales expert technician. So this is a certification of the automobile branch, which has created a number of certifications for the training, of which you have the TEAV. So it's the after-sales automobile after-sales expert technician. And this enables him to be able to follow an apprenticeship. And so this expert technician for after-sales, someone who is trained to the TEAV, well, he will thus have a training on electric cars already, because in addition to the diagnostic expertise, the person is also trained for a certain number of skills which concern alternative drive systems, whether they're hybrid or the hybrid electric, and in one day maybe the natural gas vehicles or LPG vehicles, etc. So if we have a professional baccalaureate, you might want to do further studies, or you can already be in the job and do this vocational training, or it doesn't work. For the employees already in place, we have other training programs. Here we are talking of training for apprenticeship contracts or professionalization training after the baccalaureate. This is a level 5 certification, which is equivalent to the French BTS, which is a professional diploma. And here you have more professional training than with BTS, because in the BTS you have general education courses as well. So let's give the floor now to the representative from Technopolys, Yann. You were speaking of the gap that exists in between reality and the diploma certified training that exists. Yes, you know that today there is a diploma which really answers specific needs. First of all, I'm thinking of families, you know, because until recently, families preferred seeing their kids go to a BTS educational approach than to our professional training. So for apprentices, this is a very attractive diploma and certification. Given that we wanted to work with the apprenticeship contracts here and the level 5 diplomas, which is equal to the BTS, which is good for families. And as far as inclusion and insertion is important, well, with this integration of these graduates, the quality of the training is such. It's the ANFA, which is behind this diploma. It is extremely reactive by imposing. You need to know that the classes have a maximum of 12 students, so the training is very efficient. You have the necessary equipment for on-site training, and the companies are very interested in these graduates. As far as content is concerned, there are several training blocks. One of them is called alternative drive systems. So you have the LPG and other alternative energy sources. Something that we're not necessarily aware of, and you have to have a certain success rate at the training block level to be able to go to the oral exam, which is going to be managed by the training and a company. You have to succeed with 50 to 80% of the training blocks to go and present oneself in front of the definitive jury. The jury is sovereign and is going to determine the certification or not. You even have a representative of the professional sector. So, Xavier from GARAC, you're responsible for technical and professional training. Here we have a significant cultural change, because here we need IT geeks. We have native geeks, of course, but you need future professionals for the sector. Yes, who need to be trained. So we do have geeks. Here we have another field which is highly professional, and as Mrs. CHERNYSHOVA and other players have said, we're talking of the e-evolution. You have the electric and hybrid vehicles which are present in companies. So how do you manage an electric vehicle which enters the workshop because it has suffered a breakdown or a collision? You know, that happens as well. And this is where these TEA AVs, these automobile after sales expert technician, well, here you have an e-evolution underway, because we're talking of the electrical aspects, the electronics as well. You know, today's vehicles are more and more connected. They're almost like computers on wheels. They're connected to networks. You can go directly to the manufacturer site for updates. You have to maybe change a calculator which is defective. You're going to have to reload, upload new software, etc. So you need to have that geek element from the IT point of view, so that these people can seek out the information from the right place and then download this. In the workshops, should we see a separation between two profiles, one which is electromechanic and the other more IT expert? Well, maybe IT expert is a big word here, but it's clear that with the connected vehicles, pretty soon with 5G, where we're going to have more flow of data to the vehicles, which are very important. But certain car manufacturers like Volkswagen are thinking about whether or not a single person can deal with the ICE vehicles, the electric vehicles, and all of the accompanying electronics. So they're thinking of maybe separating all of the vehicle movement portions like running gear, tires, etc. And then you would have, in fact, a person responsible to work on all of the electronic-related aspects, the downloads. And with the arrival of 4G and 5G, there are going to be some extraordinary data flows, enabling the vehicle to dialogue with the charging infrastructures, urban infrastructures. So there's a real e-evolution with the advent of electricity and electronics in the car. Are you confident that your garages, your workshops will have the means of training their employees? I've always been very optimistic, I followed the technological evolution despite my age. But I think that the major challenge, and this is where the ANFA supports us, because we have funds which support us. We have an establishment with 4,500 students, etc. You need teachers, you need equipment as well, because what we want to work on is the employability of the students with these diplomas. And for that, we need to have teachers who are competent and trained. Usually, most of these people come from the automobile sector. We employ professionals. We train them to pedagogy. Well, these vehicles did not necessarily exist when they were in their jobs. So we need to train them. We need to send them to follow training modules monitored by ANFA, and then they have to be able to train the young people. We work with certain references from the national education system so as to contribute our notions, our ideas of the day-to-day life of the automobile establishments. And there's the logistics. Let me give you an example. For a vehicle lift, well, when you need to remove the battery pack, which weighs between 400 and 600 kilos, well, if you have a threshold which is not correct for working, you will not be able to move the battery pack because of its weight. So this, too, is an evolution. It's part of the e-evolution within the training establishments and workshops. Christophe, Cap, we're going to talk about vocational training at Point S, France, which represents 660 sites. In the world, you have more than 6,000 sites. Point S is colossal. How many countries? We're present in more than 51 countries, 6,000 sales outlets in the world. France represents a very small part of that iceberg. But this morning, the tip of the iceberg is us. Yes, indeed, us. What's happening in the workshops today? I mean, I think that you started speaking about electric vehicles to your franchisees some 10 years ago. Yes, indeed. The electric certification is part of vocational training. This is what we started with. It was something that was installed in 2012 at our level. we had to make them aware of this evolution and enable them to intervene. I'm quite happy and surprised to see that the branch is studying, is working on the initial training of the future operators. You know, in September 2023, you also have a training organization. You're certified. You have a 6-day training organized with the GNFA. Yes, indeed, we're playing with the major players in the market, the GNFA, and we are launching a trajectory to train people to the electric technology. To secure is good, to certify is good, but there's also the question of what work is to be done on these vehicles and how to do it. So you are really going to the heart of things today. You, Angélique, FERNIER at ANFA, are also creating training for employees already on the job. And this is, in fact, a specific repertory. So what are you referring to? So earlier we spoke of initial training, but we also need to think of people already on the job who in the past were only trained to ICE vehicles. So the goal of this certification is a certification for employees to enable them to increase their skill level, and this with regards to the servicing and maintenance of electric vehicles. Now, this training, for it to be certified, we are going to ask that it be registered at the specific repertoire of France Compétences, which has different types of certification. I'm sorry, it's a bit technical, but you have, in fact, those trainings which are registered with the National Directory of Certified Training. These types of training are complementary to an existing profession. So these, in fact, correspond to the specific directory. The reference base is created. It's been validated by our joint professional committee and will be in place by the end of the year. And the certification will be available and registered at that specific directory. So this is for people who are already in the job. Yes, so with this, here we are targeting maintenance mechanics, automobile mechanics, not directly technicians who already are more or less trained. So we're targeting mechanics, in fact, and in this certification process, you obviously have that electric accreditation, electric work accreditation. That's a preliminary. You know that there are a dozen or so different skills integrated into this certification. And so for the brake systems, for also regarding the interventions on the air conditioning systems, the heat pumps on the electric vehicles, and so we deal with all of these different elements in the certification. And we hope that the certification will, in fact, be then deployed in many training institutions. Christophe, at point S, we haven't really detailed the 6-day training, but it's called Knowing How to Intervene on Hybrid and Electric Vehicles. Is there a parallel between yours and their approach at ANFA? Yes, indeed. We need to come to these subjects. We need to strengthen these connections by what is proposed by the branch. maybe we could work together so that you be able to propose the certifying training courses. Ours is 10 days, not 6 days. It could be interesting to work together on a certified course. We see there are evolutions in the training world. To summarize things, I think it's to avoid having any holes in the racket. Now, I think you're working at all levels to ensure that we be able to accompany that shift that we spoke of earlier. Yes, in 2024, we will also be working on the development of a complementary certificate for the automotive branch, and this will be, in fact, targeting work on the drive battery. Now, maybe we can give the floor to Elizaveta CHERNYSHOVA. I haven't forgotten you, but maybe here we can talk about the upstream side of the profession. Here we were talking about repairs, but all the sector is under transformation, and especially upstream. At the car manufacturer level, at the equipment manufacturer level, there are real upheavals underway. We need chemists, we need people from different backgrounds. So you are entrusted with a competence mission for the CARA mobility competitiveness pole. And you have a mission regarding the training to certain skills and competences, and you want to see how to create a cluster upstream of the sector's needs. Can you explain in just a few words? Yes, the CARA competitiveness pole is working with 6 sectors of activity, among them the automotive sector. Our objective is to create collaboration between the different players in the different sectors in this region. And the automobile sector today, with the 2035 deadline in mind, is faced with an in-depth transformation. As mentioned before, there's a technological change with the emergence of the electrical systems, digital evolution with the connected vehicle and the data, and finally, the societal change with the change in attitudes to the automobile and the practical usage of automobiles. At the competitiveness poll, we get requests from our members. These are car manufacturers, equipment suppliers who have difficulties in recruiting the necessary skills. Yes, we did a diagnosis on this, and all of the difficulties can be seen at all levels of the automotive value chain. We can go from the qualified technician to certain types of engineer profiles. So CARA has carried out a study of the automotive employment diagnosis for the region, and we see that 1 out of 5 companies in the automotive sector will be impacted by the change, so we need to react. But overall, the assessment is not that negative, because employment will not suffer in that it's the number of jobs that's going to decrease, but rather the distribution of jobs in the sector, like energy production, recycling, etc. There are 3 levers of action identified in this study. First of all, diversification of the company's activities, positioning themselves in other sectors like bicycles, retrofit systems, batteries. And finally, there's the anticipation of the future skills that will be needed. You know that the company needs to do a diagnosis internally as well. Then we have to talk about the appeal of this sector. There's going to be work that has to be done on that subject by the companies themselves. What are the concrete examples that you can give us of the new type of training that needs to be deployed or is already deployed in companies following this assessment? Well, CARA works very closely with an automotive excellence skills sector. This is a network of schools, engineering schools from the baccalaureate and upwards in the Lyon region. You know that we also work with professional high schools. The goal is to bring together the network of all of these establishments working for the design of training. There are some masters which are going to be developed. One which will be at the INSA in Lyon, which will create specialists in electrified cars, and another specialized masters for a business school in Clermont, but which will also be oriented electric vehicles. All of the new technology, battery electrification, power output, etc., and battery chemistry will also be the subject of these programs. Now, earlier we had a meeting on the maintenance and state of health of batteries, which is not something that's very well understood yet today. The knowledge is still a bit hazy. Then another specialty of the Rhône-Alpes region is hydrogen. Yesterday we had two representatives from Symbio on the dais here. You work with the Symbio Academy, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, indeed. Symbio is a specialist in the design and production of hydrogen fuel cells, and we saw that they were lacking experts. So they, took the bull by the horns and they put together a consortium, and it's in a second year, this program, and this was so as to design themselves a kind of training academy to train the specialists which will be necessary in the future for the hydrogen powered vehicles. So they don't exist. This profile doesn't exist. That's right. So Angélique, I think that tomorrow you will have to create profiles for these who in fact will be the first working with hydrogen. As far as hydrogen is concerned, we haven't advanced a lot yet, but we have created a new sector regarding the electric charging stations, yes, but for hydrogen we have yet to broach this subject. So for you, this is still a frontier that needs to be studied in the future. You don't have the subject for tomorrow yet. It all is a question of budget. I think that today the priority is its priority strategy is really the electric vehicles, that TAVs, for example. Yes, I tend to oversimplify things. Money is obviously an important part of the subject. Why is Technopolys not working with CARA? Why do we not include after sales? Well, at CARA, after sales and services are not so much present. We're more involved in research and development, innovation, and the bringing together of the business element, the equipment suppliers, car manufacturers. Now, as far as after sales is concerned and training, today we are taking part in a work group regionally which is dedicated to employment in the auto sector with different players, the employment services, Transition Pro, etc. And this so as to try to get an overview of what is happening in the region in the auto sector, both for new car sales but also after sales, and to see what approach we should adopt. Let's go back to the after sales world. Yann, since the reform of vocational training, you also have become an instrument of vocational training with Technopolys, because the Technopolys Pro is an important sector for us. It's 2 years old. So this is a company within the CFA, and there is a great demand here. Now, it's clear the great demand is for accreditation in electric work. And we're also working very closely with car manufacturers, Renault, for example, not to mention any names, but here we're forming technicians, electromechanics as well, and we have a technical plateau which is 100% dedicated to that activity. So a great deal is being done for the training of young people. Now, with the and what about the vocational training of people in the job RS already? The CFPA is very much involved. Do we need to do more to train people on the job in companies? Well, you know, we were talking about the fact that all of these technological evolutions are forcing us to reflect on what needs exist. There's an offer that is being implemented, but we need to see what needs to be done. You know, we need to ensure that people can benefit from this throughout their professional life. You know that the main element in this battle is money, and this so as to, you know, give companies the possibility of accessing all of these training programs for their work. In recent years, we see that, in fact, the financing has shrunk. Now, we talk about training here, these ongoing vocational training programs throughout one's life tends to absorb a very large share of the resources available at companies, and very often this is to the detriment to the training aimed at increasing the skill level and expertise of our workers. And I think we need to realize that we need to have the resources to meet the needs. You know that this is not the case today because part of the resources tend to be eaten up by the recurrence of accreditation issues, which do not enable us to enhance the skill levels of our employees. I want to stress this as the head of as a company manager. So this is not so much a problem for training, it's more for the public authorities. Yes, at the FNA, we think that there needs to be differentiation between the resources which are going to be allocated to a regular accreditation of our workers in terms of safety, and that it be dedicated to an increase in expertise. Now, for operators, and more importantly, multi-brand operators, you know, for a Point S member, a training budget which is not endless must lead to greater demands. Yes, in last 3 years, the training funds available to companies have in fact decreased by a factor of 10. We see that the amount of financing available for training is really shrinking. And in fact, the training is just for reviewing accreditation. So there's a gap between the needs and the resources available. The appeal has been launched. The conference is recorded. So send your documents to the public authorities so that they hear our needs. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you for the speakers. In 15 minutes, we meet for the last conference of today and this edition of Équipe Auto Lyon. We're going to highlight a necessary profession, that of car washing. If you don't have car wash stations in France, well, everyone's going to wash their car at home, and this is going to lead to environmental issues. So thank you very much. Meet you back here at 12:15.